The first time she saw him was in some shop basement coffee house, and man, you should hear that cat sing. He had a bass player and two girls who danced and sang background, dangling like marionettes, chewing on their strings. And it was God Bless the Child, and who would know better? It wasn't really a performance at all. But if you'll serve your soul up with cocktails and cigarettes, someone will rent you a hall. Now, he knew she was looking. A woman's eyes burn you, and this one was making it sting. And he wouldn't admit it, but he couldn't deny it. And man, you should hear that cat sing. She held the straw from her drink between her thumb and one finger and squeezed till it bent right in half. Then she chewed on one end like she was cleaning a wishbone. And you saw some guys clearing their throats like giraffes in the midst of stormy Monday. Was it salty rain or sweat they were tasting on the corners of their lips? When he washed it in between sets, when he floated to her table, grabbed her drink and took a whiff and stole a sip. They talked much more than you'd expect from two who said so much with silence, and they must have said the right things because it stuck through months of singing in those basements, sending blue notes through those smoke rings, buying drinks for Lady Midnight, stealing looks at Lady Luck. You can't deny the feeling of those lips on lonely evenings, and it plays a funny game with old desires. You've been laying down the sorrows of your own sad, silly opera, and eventually you're nothing but real tired. So it seemed a sweet idea when the Reverend sealed the union, all those smiles locked in wedding shots with coffee table eyes. But she had the strangest notion to put the firefly in a mason jar with lid holes that barely peeked out at the sky. They were living with a Burmese and one prolific canary. There's nothing scarier than whistling and purrs. Beauty needs a heart, and this one's taking hers from Daddy. She's wide awake when he don't even stir. Now that summer, it got so hot you could swallow hard and die, which is something he considered sprawled out, melting on their bed, soaking up the sheets, swimming in his head. She was humming in the kitchen some soft memory he lost, sitting just as hard and cool as steel blades on a sled. There, behind a Browning houseplant, the Burmese had a thought. Or maybe the plan was complete. The cage door was open, and where was that bird? Just fanning itself from the heat, flying towards something it saw in the corner, and suddenly the Burmese had wings. With a scream short and urgent, and off in the bedroom, he wondered what made his ears ring. Maybe the bird never knew all the words, but now you should hear that cat sing. Man, you should hear that cat sing. You ought to hear that Burmese belt out a tune. Man, you should hear that cat sing. That's a poem, I guess, that I wrote a long time ago. No, that's okay. You don't have to do that. But the reason I chose to do it, because I did it 100 years ago, and I was scared to death I wasn't going to remember it. But it was for a writing class with a teacher of mine who I remember very dearly. And it was really just an exercise. And the exercise essentially was write down a word on a piece of paper. Now hand it to the guy next to you. Now write down a word on whatever has been handed to you and hand that to the guy next to you. And the two words that I got were cat and that. And I was always kind of amazed at that thing. This is something, it's a poem first. It actually became part of a show off of the Players Workshop of Second City, and it was also a short film that we did based on that. And it all started out with two words, and I was just amazed at that. What can unlock something in you? I thought that was amazing. I thought it's just proof that you can find inspiration just about anywhere. And it's not even that it's a great poem, it's just that it's a complete thought that just kind of came out of some random words. You know, I was trying to figure out what to show you guys today to give you a sense of how writing fits into my life. It's a little complicated because I'm kind of all over the map. In my situation, writing isn't limited to one kind of thing. I write this web series. I've also written independent films and commercials. I do essays for a podcast that I do. I'm a songwriter. And I'm, honest to God, not bragging when I say all this, because really I think I just get bored easily. And maybe if I focused on one thing, I'd be more successful, at that thing than I am at all of these things. And it's debatable as to whether any of it's any good, but I love doing all of it, except maybe the commercials, which I just sort of like doing, but it's worth noting that's the thing I've made the most money at, so I guess that's why I like it. But it's weird, it's only recently that I started to take stock. What happens is you get invited to something like this and they say, talk about what you've done. And you sit there for a minute and you realize, oh my God, I haven't done anything. But then you take a pause and you take a deep breath and you realize that, there are things, and you start to get a picture of what you do. And I guess I never really stopped to think about how writing sort of applies in different areas in my life. So in a sense, I'm grateful for the perspective. And for me, too, writing often facilitates something. Like, I like playing music, so it's good to write some songs to play. I love filmmaking. I kind of prefer to direct my own stuff, and I get to work with a lot of interesting people. But it all starts with the writing. So at any rate, here's what I think I wanted to do, and you guys are the first group that I'm in front of, so we'll see how this goes, and maybe we'll change it for the next one. But I think what I wanted to try was to basically put 5 things out there that I work on, that I've done, and to kind of touch on how those things fit into my life, and also to get a little bit of a sense of what I've learned from all of those things. So as I said, for the first thing, that cat, I think what I really learned is it gave me faith that inspiration can come from anywhere. This first thing up, is this first film piece is an episode of this web series that I do. It's at thegraveyardshow.com. In fact, if you get a chance, go to thegraveyardshow.com. Their episodes are like 3 minutes long, mostly. We're in our 3rd season. One of the guys you may recognize from Chicago Fire, his name is Chris Stolte. He plays Mouch on that show. And the other guy, Dave Pasquesi, you might have seen on Veep or something like that. But he's also one of the top improvisers around town. And this is something we developed together, and we all write episodes for it. And it's really a very simple thing. It's a night security guy and a janitor who work in the overnight hours of an office building and basically just have each other. And they're not even necessarily wild about each other, but that's what they've got all through the night, in the middle of the night. And so the show is kind of like, you guys are familiar with like Charlie Brown and Peanuts, right? Yeah. So I know comic strips aren't, but it's kind of like a living comic strip is kind of our aim for it. So if we can, let's see if we could take a look at one of those.
Hitler loved them.
Blondes.
The other thing.
Dogs.
This slows food spoilage due to microbial growth.
Pasteurization.
Right you are. How did we live without this?
Electricity.
Yeah. Sometimes they look like dragons. Sometimes they look like a man running with a bouquet of flowers.
Clouds.
Scientologists. Creationists.
Idiots.
Yes. This is a terrible thing.
War.
Yep. They have huge
Horses.
Yes.
Oh,
How about that?
man,
How
oh
about that?
man.
That was...
Brother, that was just a mind meld. That was a pure and simple melding of
That
minds.
was enjoyable.
24.
24.
That is our PB.
Is it? What is that? What's a PB?
Personal best.
Oh, how about that?
Give it to me.
How's that?
Put it in there. Give it up.
That's great. No,
What do you mean, no?
I'm not going to do that.
Why not?
I don't do that.
Well, you leave me hanging here.
I'm not leaving you hanging. You lower your arm whenever you felt like it.
But we were having such a nice time.
I know, I still am. Basking in the glory of our little victory.
Well, this is putting quite a damper on it.
Not for me.
It's part of our culture.
Our culture.
You know, you're just a contrarian. That's all you are.
Yeah, I'm getting a little tired because it's inching towards a Nazi salute, which, for the record, I also don't do.
Man, you are broken. That is the only possible explanation for why you will not just simply make audible palm-to-palm contact with me.
You know what brings down entire cultures? Foolish pride. We congratulate ourselves for everything. It's my birthday, high five. I just drank an entire can of beer without breathing, high five. We just got a PB on our little word game, high five. I think it's all a little pathetic.
Fist bump?
No.
Now we're drinking to your assassination. Yeah, we're drinking to your assassination. Yeah, we're drinking to your assassination. Yeah, we're drinking to your assassination. Do you feel better now?
I don't like to high five. I think it's stupid. I also don't like poop jokes. I think about death too much. I'm afraid of the word cancer. I like to think there's a God, but I'm really not sure. And I created this little web series, The Graveyard Show, so I could laugh at all those kinds of little idiosyncrasies and fears of mine. And we put it in the middle of the night because I feel like that's when all those things really kind of eat at you more. You're more vulnerable in the middle of the night. And that's why I love writing and directing that web series. It's a release. It helps me to laugh at myself and face my fears. Helps me to know myself. And that's what I think writing is at its best. It's a way to share your thoughts, but even more than that, it's a way to kind of know yourself. Also regarding this show, the episodes are short, and that's a product of me wanting to be like those comic strips. But it's also a product of my work in television commercials, which has really taught me a lot. I mean, the main thing I think I've learned with commercial writing is the discipline of telling a story in a very concise way. I mean, you get 30 seconds tops, generally speaking, and now sometimes 15 seconds. This next piece is an old commercial that I wrote. It's for the Cubs on WGN-TV, and it came out right about the time, it's really old, it came out right about the time Nike and Just Do It really started to catch on, and this was aimed at kind of poking fun at that. There's a reference in it, because I realize you are much younger than I am. There's a reference to an old Cubs announcer named Harry Carey. Does anybody know who Harry Carey is? Okay, you probably ate at his restaurant. But anyways, there's a reference to him in this, and for those of you who don't know, suffice to say he was a Cubs announcer who liked his beer. But let's take a look at this.
It's not always easy being part of the Just Do It generation. All that jogging, all that living life to its fullest, it's exhausting. We should pace ourselves. Turn on the TV, watch a Cubs game. Look at Harry Carey, happiest guy in the world. You think he jogs? You know, some people complain that baseball is too slow. Well, maybe everything else is just too fast. Did they ever think of that?
Again, it's like, I think commercial just taught me how to be economical as possible with words. Writers, I find, tend to overwrite. I know I do. You don't have that luxury with a TV commercial. You have to just keep kind of boiling it down until it fits. So the tendency to kind of run off and be off on a tangent is just not as frequent. You have to make every word count. And even though you have to sell something, the best commercials, generally speaking, rely on some kind of insight, some kind of truth, at least a truth to you that people can understand and relate to. In this case, the truth is I felt that baseball was starting to get a bad rap for not being as fast-paced or as exciting, or as lightning-paced as a lot of other sports. I felt like that could be seen as more of a blessing than a curse. That for me was the insight. That was the truth. And that's the other thing that commercial writing taught me, that even in a category that often seems questionable from the standpoint of integrity, it's still the truth that separates the good from the bad. Next up is a little bit of a longer piece. It's from an independent film that I wrote and produced called The Married Gentleman. And it's with Michael Keaton, who was Birdman and at one time was Batman and is also in Spotlight. So I think a lot of you probably have seen him. And the other person in this is Kelly Macdonald, who you might recognize from Boardwalk Empire if you watch that show. But kind of the overall story of this is Michael Keaton's character is a suicidal hitman. Essentially, anytime he kills somebody, he contemplates killing himself immediately after. He's on the roof of a building preparing to kill a guy across the street, and Kelly is a battered wife who has escaped her husband, is trying to start over in a new city. And somehow these two develop kind of a strange relationship, knowing next to nothing about each other. She doesn't know he's a killer. He doesn't really know about her husband. And they just share kind of a sad loneliness that they never talk about, and they kind of help each other during this period. But this scene is about the first time their paths cross. In a regular romantic movie, they would call this the meet cute, only this time the guy's a killer, so probably not so cute. But this is a scene from The Married Gentleman.
I hope it snows. In that church down the street.
I'm not a very religious person.
It's beautiful. Got this statue of Jesus and he's standing with his hands like you see him like that, religious or not, you just want to run into his arms.
Well, really, who's cuter than Jesus?
I just think everything's going to be all right.
Cheer up, it's snowing.
I'm just worried. Here they come.
No one up there now.
So that's it.
There's not much more we can do. I'll tell you though, if he really wanted to jump, then he would have jumped. You probably scared some sense into him. You ladies have a ride to where you're going?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, try and have a good night.
Come on. You heard the cute cop. You saved the guy's life.
Who's to say? He could be on another ledge by now.
No, he's not.
How do you know?
Because this is a Christmas miracle. Well, think about it. He was just about to go, when down came the snow, and up looked the girl, and out reached the hand of God.
Thought you weren't a religious person.
I'm not, but I'm a romantic. Oh, it's cold. Come on, let's go.
Thanks. Screenwriting's a little bit of a different animal than most writing, because when you finish a screenplay, all you really have is a blueprint for something. It's not an end in itself. It's a map to somewhere you want to go. People don't read screenplays, really. They watch movies. So a screenplay is a means to another end. Is the pages, do we have that slide of the pages? I think there's 2 and 2 next. Maybe not. Tell me if they pop up behind me. Yeah, you can see that's basically the scene that we just watched. And I don't know how much of that you can read, but it's pretty true, actually, to the screenplay, which is a little rare sometimes too, but it's an independent film, so sometimes those, I think, tend to be a little more true. But this is, in addition to kind of having to think about adjusting to how you write for something like this, it's also done in kind of a formal template. And the reason is because film crews need to understand, and everybody needs to understand where they need to be, the interior of a building, the exterior of a building. All those things are pretty well spelled out, so there's not a lot of people winging it doing screenplays. And I guess the other reason I wanted to pick this is because while there's talking in that, the most important stuff that we saw there, it plays out visually, It's not dialogue heavy. It's about images. And in addition to that, almost as much as any other writing I've done, I think writing screenplays has taught me to know the answer to a question that a hero of mine, did you guys ever hear of Garry Shandling? Does anybody know who that is? He died, I'm sorry? Yeah. Have you ever, he had a show called The Larry Sanders Show, and actually that stuff will probably come around a lot now. He passed away last week, and he was a comedian, he was a stand-up comedian, but he was also an excellent writer, television writer, and he did some groundbreaking shows that kind of set the stage for things like The Office and Curb Your Enthusiasm. He was a pretty influential guy, and really smart. And he kind of held up as the question that you always have to ask yourself, and it seems obvious, but you have to keep asking yourself. And the question is, what's it about? It's not as simple a question to answer as you may think. And it's especially important in a long-form piece like a movie, because a movie in the writing, just like in the making of it, can be kind of a long slog. You could be at it for a while. And every once in a while, you'll find yourself down some blind alley, and it may be because you've kind of gone off on a tangent. And you kind of have to ask yourself, this thing that you're writing, what's it about? I wrote this movie, we made this movie, and when it was finally released, we got some very nice reviews. But the most beautifully written and the most kind of oddly informative for me was by a critic in the Los Angeles Times named Betsy Sharkey. And this is how she described that scene you just saw of them outside. She said, when she first sees him, he's wrapped in evening shadows, standing on the edge of a roof. She screams no and saves him. The first time he sees her face is raised to the heavens, arms outstretched like an angel, snow drifting down around her. He hopes he won't have to kill her. I loved that. I wished I wrote that. It was better than whatever I had there. But the real kicker of her review was her last paragraph, because I think it articulated better than I could the answer to the question, what's it about? Whenever someone asks me the question about The Merry Gentleman, what's it about, I would say it's about a ruthless and regretful man who thinks a woman that he's met is his guardian angel, only to find out in the end that it's the other way around. And I thought that was a good answer. But then I saw hers, and I liked it better. She said, The Merry Gentleman is a bittersweet testament to the power of small, selfless acts and a reminder that you never know who will be the one to save you. I think that's just really nicely put. And again, I just was kind of amazed at just how lovely the writing was. That's really the best, that's the beauty of good writing. It sort of expresses what you may already know on some deeper level, but you just haven't expressed it yet. And I think sometimes when we see things, or if we go to a movie that we love, or if we read something that we love, there's just this sense that like somebody was able to kind of pinpoint that thing that you feel inside of you, but until they kind of said it, you didn't have a name for it. Where are we with time, just so I make sure we don't? 10, 11 minutes. Okay. Well, does anybody have any questions, first of all? I'll give that the requisite 20 seconds. Anybody? Yes? What kind of is my favorite? Well, actually, songwriting, I think, is probably my favorite. It's because it's something I can do. If we have a few minutes on the way out, I'll play a song here. But if it's something, there's a lot of the things I do that are for visual media and all that require that you take it that next step and you get a group of people, and I love the social aspect of that, because writing can be kind of lonely, frankly. So I love that. But there's something wonderful about being able to kind of write a song, and then next thing you know, you've got a song and you can play it, It's like painting or something like that. There's your painting when it's all over. It doesn't require something else. So probably that, yeah. Was there another one? Sure. When did you realize you wanted to be a writer, and what initial steps did you take when you wanted to be a writer? Well, I think I realized it when I was really young. I actually remember, I have this memory, and I actually tried to find it to bring it here to embarrass myself. I remember spending a weekend at my grandmother's place when my parents were away, and there's not always a hell of a lot to do at your grandmother's place. So I was trying to occupy myself, and I wrote this little book of poems, and I was probably in about 3rd grade, 4th grade, so it was a lot of leaves are pretty, I think they're great, that kind of stuff. But I think after it was all over, I thought, man, I wrote a book of poems. So I started writing music not that long after that, and then I think I was always just trying to figure out, I think at the end of the day, I wanted to write TV shows or something of that nature, and I kind of ended up in this in-between world. But I've sort of been, the best thing you can do to get started on writing is there's nothing stopping anybody from sitting down and doing something. And yeah, I am a little all over the map as far as the various things I do, and I'm not kidding. I really, in some cases, I think, yeah, maybe a little focus would have helped here, but I like all these various things, but when I went to school, I wrote some television stuff and screenplays and things of that nature. Or I tried to do for an existing television show, I would try to write a whole script, an original script, based on that, knowing I was never going to sell that script, but just to see if I could get from one end to the other. Anything else? If I'm not seeing you, just yell. Okay. I guess I should try. I brought a guitar, so I should try to play a song. Is that okay? Scared to death. Hello, am I there? I'm sure some buzzer's going to go off right in the middle of this. Please go where you need to go. You know, the songwriting part is probably the most personal kind of stuff. So I think that's why, in some ways, it's ultimately probably the most gratifying. This is called This Too. This too shall pass, and I guess that's good news. Which reminds me the other day, I couldn't help myself thinking of you. It's like an old broken bone, big game you lose. This too shall pass. I guess that's good news. And heartache gets old, just like everything does. All that you feel, all that you own, everything that you love. Thought about that one time, and it made me miss you. This too shall pass. I guess that's good news. Snowed all night long, just like the weatherman said. He was right for a change. We were buried alive. It was over our heads. The next day the sun and the plow broke right through. This too shall pass. I have a friend, can't watch old TV shows, 'cause when he sees the audience, he thinks they're all dead now, and someone's wearing their clothes. But you can think way too much till you're out of your mind. If it's a matter of life, then it's a matter of, it's just a matter of time. And this too shall pass, just like these blues. Which reminds me the other day, I couldn't help myself thinking of you. It's like an old broken bone, the thing that you lose. This too shall pass. I guess that's good news. This too shall pass. I guess that's good news. Thanks a lot, and thanks for your attention today. You know, to sum it up again, I'd like to quote some other thing that my guru, this guy Garry Shandling, said. He said, "Is there a way that I can learn about myself and the world and the people and what this is all really about?" You know, that was his idea of writing, and that's a tall order, but you know, it's something to root for, and it's a privilege to try to do that. Thanks very much for coming today. I appreciate it. Thanks.